applause.
All right, there we go. All right, well, thanks for joining us. I'm here with SMBW. Me and Carter, again, on tour, trying to figure out how the heck to bring all this equipment to people's offices. We've had a few fun experiences. I was in Chicago last week, and so that's why I own those.
Oh, you can able fit all that stuff
I put them on the plane, and that was crazy. So now we're here at your office. This was fun, trying to find a parking spot in the parking deck and then bringing this here. So again, if you don't know me, I'm Kenny. I know we know each other. Carter, we work together. And we got SMBW folks listening in. Phil is here also from our office listening in. And if anybody's there, you can send us a private chat, ask us questions, or if you want to come on, we can bring you online. And y'all don't see it, but over on my screen, there's like what they're seeing. It's our joint conversation. So, and we have Jesse in, KL listening, Emma, Lou, and Phil here listening. So quick introduction if you want to introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Michelle Mikida, Principal of Interiors at SMBW.
I'm Majd Soudi with in the architecture side of SMBW.
Yes, so we worked with Majd quite a bit. So you're interiors? Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about
that. So I run the interior side of the practice. We do corporate higher education. We work with the architects that do mixed use. Any of the wide range of our clients, community, lifestyle projects.
Yeah. Awesome. And so today we're here to talk about, I'm just kind of messing with these levels, but we're talking coordination in construction. And one of the things that I've realized is nobody disagrees that it's important, absolutely important. But whenever things go wrong, you sort of start to wonder, or people rarely agree on whose responsibility what things were. And so as design professionals, as the MEP side, we're in the light commercial market. So we don't always have the fees to do VDC or high level detailed coordination. A lot of that gets delegated out. And so we try to make it clear, like what level we'll be doing. And it still invariably becomes the engineer didn't coordinate. Like, well, okay, well, we didn't get paid to think that deeply. And so we'll do things like delegate coordination drawings or shop drawings or things like that. So we want to be able to review and see during the process of coordinating all of these elements, have you impacted our design in a way that needs to be changed, right? And then what we find is that the drawings that we have for ductwork ends up being used for fabrication, directly for fabrication. And so that kind of started this theme. And so when we're going on tour, we're going to choose a word in this particular one. We're talking about coordination, all that kind of stuff. So in your market, the architect, you guys have to deal with, or in your interior design, so much more, the way things look, the way the space operates, how it interacts with the user. And then there's the entire tome of the book, the code book, the ICC codes and accessibility and all that. So how do you manage the myriad of things that you have to put together? What's the most common frustration when it comes to that responsibility?
Of the designer or architect goes into being a generalist and understanding on a conceptual level, MEP, structural, civil. I see the designer as a visionary who has a vision and then takes that vision and tries to lead the other engineers and their teammates towards the common goal. Mm-hmm. I think the general struggle that happens is being able to make the engineers and the other teammates visualize what your vision, and trying to translate that to the engineers is generally the challenge, especially when you're looking at duct work and having a duct going through a lobby that you're trying to hide that work or trying to aesthetically focus on. Trying to aesthetically focus on, the systems in a building and being able to use that and conceal it in the more important areas, I'd say.
Yeah, that's something that we don't have to deal with, is fighting for the vision of it. The engineers, I love just being behind the walls and not necessarily having that component of it, but it seems like you'd have to go to bat frequently, almost on a daily basis, to try to protect what you are trying to get across, because that's part of your branding is the architectural style. But then you have to manage the limits of the budget or what your engineers are willing to do, maybe.
I will say that what happens though is that your items are the first things that we get complaints about. They're not going to complain necessarily about the aesthetic or the paint color, but they're going to complain because the room is hot, it's cold, the water's not running hot, it's not running fast enough or hard enough, that sort of thing. So it's as much important as the way it looks as to how it functions, because those really are the first complaints we get in week one.
Yeah. And I sometimes will just resort to fear tactics when I'm trying to, persuade somebody to be okay with my ideas. Mechanical moisture is the biggest one to try to make sure people do the right way. And it's expensive to remove moisture from a space. But so I'll just say, well, do you really want to spend $4 million on this building only to have it rot from the inside out? I mean, do you really want the $30,000 that you're saving here to be taken away? But that's my strategy. Either that or I lean on the code and say you have to. So it's so much easier for us to negotiate. What kind of things do you have to do to try to fight for your ideas to keep them in scope and that kind of thing?
I think to Maj's point, it is starting holistically and what you want the project is trying to achieve, but then the way we document it by having it divided into sections, looking at the ceiling first, looking at the power next, and really breaking it down into those small parts allows you to holistically go through everything that you need with the equipment, and then you can move on and do everything you need with the lighting or do everything you need in the bathrooms. But work your way in those little pieces helps, control your mind to focus on just that element and getting everything coordinated, thinking about every instance that it could go wrong.
Yeah. And I suppose you're held to some degree responsible for how the whole thing comes together. Well, not to some degree, probably to a major degree, right? Yeah. And how do you even define that in scope? Like, from how cool you'll make something look. Like somebody says, this is not as cool as I paid you to design it, or this is cool as I hope to be there under contract. How do you manage those kinds of expectations? Well,
there's a lot of language in contracts about ensuring full coordination is one that's come up recently. And well, what does that mean? And for the most part, the visual is always kind of easy because we're showing them that. So I don't really feel like we've ever had that come back at us, but it really is all these other things. It's the functional thing. Can the drawer open because the hardware's in the way?
Yeah.
Does the coffee maker adequately dump the grounds into the trash can?
Yeah, man, those kind of things are almost impossible to catch all of that. And it seems so obvious when it's there, when you're staring at it. It's just like, oh, okay, now that it's built, that makes a lot of sense. But, I don't think people understand from the engineering side, especially from the architectural side, is how many things you have to think about for it all to work and be legal and be comfortable and all of this. And it's just so much to get right. And so just one little thing going wrong, everybody's like, oh, I can't believe you didn't think about that. Well, from our perspective on a light commercial market, when we're not paid to think that deeply, like we're basically on a lot of our projects, make sure you have the ventilation, people don't suffocate, the building doesn't catch on fire, we got the bus sized the right way, we're removing moisture, people are relatively comfortable, but it's not illegal to be uncomfortable. So you can, you can be mad, but it's not a violation of any real engineering ethical duty to be uncomfortable. So that might be similarly related to the way things look or how things turn out, these finishes and all that. It's like a frustration, but I wouldn't want to try to fight that battle. I imagine you find yourself in the middle of that a lot.
I mean, that's kind of every day.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
Managing the expectations, what their budget can afford, what their vision, what they want, but how do you get there and how can we help them and still, make sure we make the money that we want to make, or that, we don't completely run out of fee trying to help them.
How do you hire cool, like people that know how to make things look cool?
It's a good question. I think it's a process, and it's a long one. I think school does really important things, and I think one of them is to find your design voice, similar to how engineering is. You're going to school to figure out a process of problem solving, and I think design school does that in a way, but every person also problem solves differently. So it just depends on the work that you produce in school and also the thought process of sitting down with someone and having a conversation. I think that goes a long way into understanding their approach and their aesthetic visions of things. And we don't have to all agree on the same aesthetics. I think that's what SMBW does really well, where everyone's very different. Everyone sees things differently. So that's, I think, that's how we hire cool. I think we hire different people with different perspectives and have different interests that bring different unique instances to the table and visions.
I've always, when I was a junior engineer, so my buddy Andrew always talked about the two kinds of architects that he knew of, like the permit code focused architect and then the designer style of architect. And I know everybody has to have both, but it starts to make sense to me more now when we work with different architecture firms. Like we need just a permit, we need the AD accessibility, we need to get in and out, we need the egress, we need to know what the use type is, all that. And that's it. And to me, if I was an architect, that's what I want to be. I just like make it a transaction, you know.
More objective.
That sounds like an engineer's
I
answer.
know, right? Yeah. That's why when people ask us to lay out the lights, I'm like, no, don't ask your engineer to do that, please. You know the first thing about it. But hiring cool has always been a struggle for us as engineering firm to hire in general people that are engineers that can consult and communicate. That's a struggle. We're not the coolest kids in class situation, you know. I like engineers, don't get me wrong, but hiring and finding licensed professionals, that's another challenge. I'm sure you guys deal with the same, but it goes through my mind, you know. We're talking about coordination, the politics and the challenges there. So you have to deal with not only things looking right or people criticizing every last decision you make, color choice, finishes, all of that. Then you have the code. Then you have the politics. So now you have to find somebody who knows how to make things look cool, can read technical, write technical, specify, and deal with the stress of pretty much what I would imagine to be your daily life if you're like doing CA. I mean, the architects are in the middle of all that. So how do you deal with that? How do you train for or think about yourselves dealing with the constant conflict and politics of those situations?
So a lot of it is the team that comes to the project. So understanding the different roles that people play and playing to those strengths. So we have some people that are better at building those relationships with the engineers and working together, people that are better at design, people that are comfortable with conflict resolution and having to make that tough phone call. So it's a team effort and bouncing those ideas off of everybody. We all sit in one open space so that Majd can hear me on the phone if I'm having a conversation and learn how I talk to the client, the GC, the sub, whatever it might be to do that conflict resolution. So it's a team approach, because then I will need to go back and vet the answers by somebody who is more on the technical side or somebody who was in the drawings and in the field. So you're never alone trying to do all those things.
That's the benefit of having a firm with more folks, more resources of different skills sets you can reach out to and blend that out.
Yeah, especially on the political side, I mean, we'll check each other quite often just to get a frame of reference for, like, am I reading this email wrong? Is the tone of it okay? I'm trying to get across what I want to communicate without sounding like like an ass or anything.
Yeah, thanks ChatGPT. We use that to write things, rewrite it. I'll write it and just say, can you rewrite this for clarity and simplify it for me? And it's like, oh wow, man, I wish I could write that well. So
Yeah.
robots. But yeah, that's scaling is difficult for us, and especially when we talk about this one word and how of coordination. And right now, everybody in our own industry on one single project, just all the different myriad the team members on it, how differently they see it. I hear it all the time. Oh, the engineer should have done this. And it's like, well, so technically speaking, nobody should do anything unless it's itemized in the contract of services. So you may have an opinion that I should have been paid to add more services, but I shouldn't have done anything other than those obligations. Now we balance that with like business relationships and maintaining that, but same thing. I mean, I always just I can empathize with how much you and a GC are in the middle of all of it. So do you guys usually are you in the middle of CA all the way through projects, or is that just pretty much standard that you're there? And how all involved is the architect in a typical project during the construction process?
It depends on the project, but for the most part, we're at every OAC. So whether those are weekly or bi-weekly, but we're weekly and then daily in conversations with the GC, answering questions, running out to the site. Some projects, it's, hourly as needed. And they just call you or text you a picture. Is this the right way this was supposed to be installed? Which happened yesterday. Yep, that herringbone looks great.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'll say that another challenge with the design industry is that we're a service industry. Our relationship with the client is very important. So, we do have scope and we have it outlined, but sometimes you have to go past that and beyond that, because what that does is it creates, a stronger relationship with the client who's more likely to recommend you to others or more likely to come back. So this is what becomes a struggle where, is this within scope? Is this not within scope?
Yeah.
How do I maintain this relationship and be of good service to everyone? And in our contract, standard of care is always key, or legally, standard of care is always really important. So that's the challenge of it.
Yeah, the balancing how much extra you might do here and there for a client versus, am I training the client to expect this boundary not to exist all the time? And do I want them to appreciate me for that? Or, I don't know about y'all, but every time I call my attorney, I get a $500 bill. And it's not that easy. It's not that easy for the architecture profession and the engineering when, for us during CA, usually we only hear from anybody when the first RFI comes up, and that means change order. So it's like, we're just like, oh, shoot. So we'd like to start being at kickoff meetings. We've been talking about that with folks, like just to state our assumptions, just before anybody says the engineer should have, we can say, just so you know what we didn't do. This is how we've approached it. So you can be expecting a couple surprises. We've delegated the following coordination responsibilities to the contractor. And if you haven't included it, let's talk to the developer who's on the call and say, do you realize that they haven't put the budget for the 40,000? People don't, you may know because you do it a lot, but for us to do a 3-story building, we might charge for this recent one we've done with ACI about 40,000 for the MEP design, limited CA, that kind of contract. We got hired for that kind of building to do just the VDC, the BIM modeling and everything. It was $90,000 contract for just mechanical. That's how much more time it takes to just coordinate like that. If you'll have the expectation that we have that level of coordination in the baseline contract for 30 or 40, that there's not an understanding of how much the ductwork is like 5% of the entire process, the mechanical design. It's so much more about load calculations, assuming, consulting about the use of the space, when will people be here, all that kind of stuff. So it makes me want to ask, where in your profession do you see people don't appreciate what's behind the scenes that goes into making it work?
Sometimes I think it's making sure you have that conversation up front. So understanding what is in that scope and maybe not just letting the architect know, but having a forum to talk to the client. That's one of the other things that probably happens the most. Like you're saying, you're not in those OACs or in those kickoff meetings, but that you are just sort of separate rather than at the table. So that notion that you could be there or have more visual presence, which maybe some of the engineers don't, you guys might not like initially, but getting in a room or having you in front of people to present what are those things, what might be the problems, what did we do, could alleviate that unknown.
Just give us 5 feet of plenum space and no glass walls, and we'll be fine.
Ain't happening.
Yeah, no, right? That's the construction tolerance is how we've been solving it lately. Like if there's no budget for all that coordination, we just say, well, then we're going to have to demand more tolerance on construction. Like we're going to need a chase up and down this building, or I'm not even going to start designing this. That we have a project recently. That's the conversation. Like I'll charge hourly for me to give you a custom duct route for every single one of these conditions, which might end up being $20,000, and it'll still be a pretty bad design because it's still going to lead to RFIs because it's going to be hard. It's adaptive reuse, So, or let's get rid of some leasable square footage, little bit. Give me a chase straight up down the stairwell right here, and then that's it. It'll get built. It's predictable. The tolerances, like the contractor will say it works. If we don't go down that route, it's going to be extra for me to think about it, and it's probably not going to really work that well. So we've been fighting for that on our side now more recently. Like, can we get a little bit lower ceiling?
Do you find that doing the 3-dimensional scanning nowadays of the buildings is really helpful to then, work around all those instances, or are they still not accurate enough?
It's just the time that it takes to even evaluate those. And some of them require a physical hard drive. There's such huge files that we've had to mail hard drives for these multi-building projects in West Virginia. We're doing with Monument right now. They have a point cloud, and it's a huge effort. And you need a computer that can even open it. So you need a specialized computer to do that. So there are firms like Prolog, they're great. That'll turn it into a Revit model. I'm sure you guys have worked with them.
Yep.
And so then your model itself is closer. So that's there. But again, it still requires you to dive into the extra details. yourself as a consultant. So I always tell people, it makes it sound like we don't coordinate when I say this, but it's really, it's me saying, like I say, look, we're not putting an air handler out in outer space. That's what I've been told. It's not like it's over there in Mars. You know, it's in a place where we think generally it will work, but I haven't looked at every sprinkler pipe and every single structural element and all of that unless you pay for that, which costs, like I said, 3 or 4 times the original engineering fee to get into that level of detail, especially for licensed professionals to spend their time doing it. And there's just not the fees for it. The larger projects that I would imagine there are, but we're in the light commercial sort of space, you know. So, you know, what are your expectations? Pretend there's no contract. You know, what are yours for coordination with your design professionals?
I think I've learned this in the past few years, and with working on some projects, is that coming out of school and directly into work, you think that buildings are built like cars, and there's all these parts, and everything is custom, and everything fits in just the way you imagine it, and it's just all these puzzle pieces coming together. But I think it's important on our side to acknowledge that it's not a car. It requires, you know, any person to come and look at a piece of drawing and be able to build it in real life. And I think the tolerances that you're talking about are important, and I think on our side that needs to be acknowledged. So yeah, I think that the construction tolerance is important.
And you need an engineer that knows that too, like that is aware of, been through the challenges themselves, and just says, I just can't, like this one, I'm like, I'm just not going to draw it until I get a chase. It's just not going to work. It's kind of, you've maybe had contractors come up and say, this won't work. Right. And now I'm realizing, oh yeah, of course it won't work. But this is me in my own personal career. You know, every engineer and architect goes through their own. I'm actually, how long have you been here, Majd? You came straight from school?
Yeah,
Tech?
I've been here for around 4 years, over 4 years, yeah.
And you were at Tech before?
I was at Tech before.
Okay. Another Tech guy. I'm a VCU, so.
I went to VCU.
All right, cool, right on. I'm the only one at Primitive that's a VCU guy.
You guys are undefeated in football.
Oh, no, wait, Phil is VCU.
We are undefeated in football. That's right.
There you go.
Wait, did you study the interior design there? I have a piano degree first, and then I didn't know what to do with that, so I got an engineering degree.
Okay.
I was in school for a long time.
I would say my expectations would be that a duct diffuser is not where I have a light fixture. Like, I think that sort of that baseline, that between the design trades, it's coordinated. I think where the tolerance comes in is usually the sprinkler lines, because those are rarely designed and laid out. I would say a given would be understanding the height of the structure and the beams you need to work around. That would be a given, that you're not trying to put something through a beam that's there, that's kind of clear in the base structure. But as you think about, it's not a car and maybe it's like spaghetti, that you know there's going to be the wiggly things, but the stuff that's like known, like your diffuser shouldn't be over that light fixture, or your square shouldn't be in my linear ceiling. Like, come on.
And aligning with that too is that, you know, there's a vision again, and there are important moments in that vision that need to be maintained aesthetically. So I think understanding where those moments are, and the areas where we need custom ductwork, or we need those unique layouts, and we need those problem-solving traits, that's where I think we all need to be aligned in as designers and consultants.
Knowing
together.
where to prioritize the effort. Yeah. Phil asked to bring in Lou. I see you there. I see your camera. Do you have anything to add? I can bring you into the conversation. All right, let's bring him in. Hey, there he is. Hey, how's it going? How much of this does it make you want to strangle me as an engineer?
Well, I do think that Michelle kind of hit on some of the points, that it's just the coordinating, even in between, you know, lighting and sprinklers, and just the number of things that you have to have. It's important that, you know, you're at least looking at that. Some of it doesn't matter, but in, you know, kind of high visual spaces, you want to make sure that you've got that all coordinated.
You know, that we talk about it at Permazip, where I say it's not our fee, we shouldn't do it, but we've also talked about, well, we can't sell a car without brakes. Like, you need to make sure that whatever contract you does have at least brakes. Otherwise, you know, it's silly to sell the car in the first place. Your car analogy, and I'm using on the other side. So we've been working. That's why part of this for us is really trying to dive deep. What is truly expected at the baseline for any service, like the lights that you mentioned, or just for us, we've realized just meetings. we used to be really strict on like every single meeting we would be, but now we realize, man, one meeting can save 20 hours of production.
Mm-hmm.
Just seriously, you know, we used to take a markup and just 20 hours later. It's like, whoa, wait, I could have just had, maybe that could have been a letter, or maybe that wasn't the right direction, or we could have worked it through it.
Right. Well, I think the digital space fixes that a bit. Because
Yeah.
before, meetings were like, I had to drive somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had that meeting that it was always an hour, and then you had to drive back. And now it's like, I'll call you on Teams and we'll be on for 20 minutes and then you're done.
Yeah.
So I would agree that I think that fixture of being stuck to a specific quantity of meetings is somewhat silly. It's like, well, let's just hop on a Zoom meeting and it's fine. It's 45 minutes. And then that saves me 2 hours of drawing or edits or other items.
Which is different than like a regularly scheduled OAC that, you know, that's contract stuff for sure. But then like, oh, this comes up, let's just talk about it. Cause it's in your own best interest also, you know, just to avoid 20 hours of work, you know?
And the profession's constantly changing or developing. So BIM does it really well where when I share a model with you guys, you have the structural, you have where we want the walls, we have all this information that's already there. So just looking around there, you can always just take a snapshot, email me, say, hey, this beam isn't where it should be, or I think this duct the ceiling height needs to be lower. So all this information is already there and at your disposal. It just needs just some.
So Lou, I'll ask this question to you since you're with us. I'm always curious, and I know the answer is it depends, but for you guys at your firm, where have you found the most success with successful coordination efforts between the structures of design build or design bid project?
Just the experience that we have working as teammates on, you know, maybe multiple projects. Just over time, you find really kind of who works best on the type of building that you're designing, and making sure that we're all working together. You know, technology's changed a lot, and you know, you used to be able to have to get everybody in a room looking over a set of drawings, and at this point, to be able to pull something up, and you know, I could be halfway across the country working with you all on you know, a project, and to be able to mark up.
Hopefully not on vacation.
Yeah, that's true. But to be able to mark up drawings and coordinate between each other, and not necessarily having to be in the same office, you know, I was a little tentative about, you know, that's not going to work. But it seems to have really improved, and I think has made it a lot easier to coordinate the sets.
Yeah. I used to just drive me crazy having 3 engineers drive hour and a half in a car. You know, I'm thinking hour and a half times 3 people. That's a lot of time. I could be doing something else, you know. And now you can just meet real quick or text. And for us, these relationships, these have led to better relationships with the folks we know, these conversations. And so then you find out, a text message. Like I was talking to Stuart Evans just today. We're talking about a water meter. It's like a $60,000 surprise for the church and all this. And I said, hey, can you get back to me on that? He's like, more importantly, when are we going to do the pizza podcast? You know, just like a more trust. And we talk about that a lot. He talks about trust hurdles and working with people you trust. And Lou, you brought up experience. That's huge. There's actually a paper we read on the risk factors in construction that would contribute to overages and costs and overages and delay in time. And what they found, the long story short, is that one of the leading factors for risk was experience for the design professionals and the builders and what they do. So we talk about construction tolerance on our side. We're also trying to advocate for better trade contractors that we know are capable of the work that we specified, because that's huge. Another one, and you guys probably would totally relate to this, the user, the owner themselves, and what they present as risk to the project, whether they're experienced developers or it's their first time, what their expectations are. How do you guys manage expectations for the user on your side?
So I think it's those early conversations and trying to a bit be their educator along the way. Because for the most part, our corporate and private clients, this is not what they do every day. Developers, it's a little bit more kind of in their wheelhouse, but making sure they understand what would come next, or what is the 10-week, 10-month look ahead, so that they have some insight into where we're going and why we're going there. It's definitely a process and a bit of a handhold as we move along, but it helps us guide them. And it goes back to the idea of trust, is that they have to trust us to move along. And then we want to be able to trust you that you've gotten these things. And it's all kind of that team building.
Yeah, trust is huge. I mean, in a litigious industry, it's tough to have trust when you're looking over your shoulder all the time. It's actually a reason why a lot of people, you're nervous about talking about it. And I'm like, well, how else can we build trust than to just be honest with each other about our own like shortcomings or frustrations, and teach each other or others that are learning about this. We've had a lot of success on the channel, the YouTube channel. Like we have like 55,000 views now of these videos, and we haven't promoted that channel. You know, it's called the Blueprint Tour, and it's just organic. So there's a need, I think, for us to be sharing what we know with the industry, you know, whether it's somebody that's wanting to be a part of it or curious, or just frustrated with what's going on, or how to get into the commercial market, or what's it like to really be in architecture. Well, let me go into that. Can you tell me about what you thought interior design would be when you were in school versus what it is now?
So
Where do we start?
Everybody's, yeah.
How long do we have?
definitely started more in that residential realm. That's kind of where I had worked a bit in high school and kind of what I was interested in. And then I think, to my happy surprise, it became a lot more technical and a lot more process driven. And then now, sort of in my management role, it's a lot more people. Like it is all people, and who should be on what project, and how are they best suited for this? How is the temperature of this client? What are we doing to fix that this person might feel left out on the project team, and then that's why they're complaining later? Like we just talked about that yesterday. So how it's really about managing the team and all the people coming together. So it's kind of taken that evolution of like really in the design to becoming very technical to learning that background. And now it's more all about the people skills.
Yeah.
The politics of it all is a completely separate skill set from, you could be a top-notch designer or architect, not know how to handle the politics, and it could go south.
Because, I mean, like Majd said a while ago, it's a professional service. So we're selling our expertise, selling our design, but we're also just selling. And so how are you able to do that? Can you talk well in front of people?
Yeah.
Can you speak eloquently? Can you make the points you need to make? All that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why the architects tend to be the quarterback of the project, because the subject matter experts and like the engineering side are not, you wouldn't want us to be picking out your interiors, and you wouldn't want us to be leading all of that communication.
Yeah, handling your politics. Oh, Lord. Engineers. One of our first engineers we ever hired, first meeting he was at, first thing he said in front of the client, these were done drawings. He was like, I would never have designed it this way.
Oh, goodness.
I was like, okay, all right, cool. You could tell me that maybe offline. That would be cool, So we're not gifted in that realm. We've been trying to figure out how to do that. Train engineers, communication classes. Literally, it's cheesy, but there's a charisma university class that I was
I love that.
looking at, like teaching how to just, I don't know, start a conversation off a little softer and it just kind of make folks feel more comfortable and remind everybody we're all people. At the end of the day, we're people and we want to do good work. We genuinely want this to be a good reflection of us. And so, engineers, we go straight into it. Okay, well, the HVAC's not important.
Yeah, I know for me, I was nervous when I first started to pick up the phone at all. Like any conversation with anybody, I was nervous to have that. Just like, let me doodle my pipes all over on the sheet and I'll send it along, and then hopefully I never hear from you again. But it's definitely not. It wasn't my strongest attribute starting out, but I guess why we're doing this right now is that talking to people just changes everything. It's like every conversation, you think you're not going to have anything to talk about, but then wouldn't you know it, you end up talking for like an hour and a half about some kind of issue in the building, some kind of component of the building that you're realizing, oh, we didn't have all this figured out. And in the same way, everybody so far who has been on the podcast has said beforehand that they're worried they're not going to have enough to talk about. And every single time, we're an hour and 20 minutes into an hour-long podcast, and we have to stop. We have to end the podcast I just think we take for granted how much the communication is like a superpower. It's like makes the more we add it into the project, the more those expectations are set. Everybody knows what everybody else is expecting to see, and you're able to adjust people's expectations to fit what you are actually going to do. You know, like we were just talking earlier about how difficult it is to actually just hire somebody, and that's somebody that is in your organization, and we're talking about having multiple groups of professionals come together and have to navigate these things together.
I think
Just all that to say, appreciate you guys being on here and being willing to continue talking outside of project context. You know, it's able to speak more freely about what our expectations are without it being, related to a change order, which is a nice change of pace.
I was going to say that I think everybody wants to be heard. So the idea that you're in a forum where you're asking questions of someone, if you think about that one family member that you see them and all they do is talk about themselves, you're kind of like, aren't you going to ask me about my kid? But like that, the forum where you're going to ask people, or that's the way to start the conversation. It's not to bring up something about yourself, but it's to ask them, oh, do you have kids? Or where do you live in Richmond? Like there's so many things that then the person will go on and on and on because you asked about them and you're listening. So I think that could be why, because you're asking us questions and you're forced to listen to what we're saying.
Yeah. We finally have to shut up about the ductwork, you know? So Majd, I back to you. So when I first started working with you, it was maybe a year or two ago, maybe on this project. And
2 years ago.
I was always surprised that you seemed like you had a lot more experience than like if I seemed half as like knowledgeable as you in the period of time that I know you've worked, I'd have been way better engineer. But so is that like, were you always into architecture? Like, did you have experience in an internship? How did you was it SMBW's amazing management skills?
I was into architecture, but I grew up in Jordan, so my experience in architecture was fairly limited. I wasn't interning. We didn't really have an architecture class or any of that. So
yeah.
I think coming into a smaller firm, you're asked to wear very many different hats, and so you have to play different roles for depending on a project. So I think just being immersed in experiences, and I think we're a big learn by doing firm where we give the opportunity for younger staff to do and to learn. I think that was the difference mainly.
How much of so you went to VCU, you're tech, so just kind of a question for each of you is how much did your schooling prepare you for how different, like how much politics and people stuff you'd have to deal with? Because you mentioned that as one of the major changes. Were you taught about that, or is it just purely technical?
Ugh. I feel like VCU did, it starts out and it's a fine arts degree. So you do a whole year of color study and figure drawing and sort of that baseline, which is kind of interesting and always there. But then they did go into kind of the basics. But I feel like it is so different than what that started out as.
How about at tech?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a similar thing where I don't think they have much time to really teach us everything. It's about gaining the skills and the important eye to see things in the way that, you need to see them. The focus is more aesthetic, obviously, but being out of school and being able to be on calls with engineers, that was foreign.
Yeah.
You don't really learn
the communication side. I think we had like a business class or something like that was required. That was just generally resumes and stuff like that. Maybe a couple speeches. Lou, and I'm going to go to Carter because he has an interesting degree. But Lou, I'm curious about you and your education. Like, where did you go, and did they prepare you for all of that part of the architecture world?
I went to North Dakota State, and I want to say for the most part they did. The one thing that you just mentioned, though, I think is important is, we do have a professional practice class that you have to take along the way, and it would be good to have a little more training in the business of running a firm. You may think I'm never going to run a firm, but just to understand how a firm runs and just the money side that's really required. Just I think that could be improved.
Mhm.
Otherwise, I think for the most part, yeah, it is about designing mostly.
Yeah.
But then, being able to detail, and you kind of learn that along the way.
Yeah, we don't, it's a lot. You mentioned the business. That's a complete, balance sheets, taxes, legal, regulatory, understanding the difference between a balance sheet and a profit and loss and all of that stuff if you do get into the business, or the fact that as you get more and more skilled, you end up in a management position. Now you have to deal with most of your day trying to figure out how to train and develop or put the right person on the project or teach them the soft skill side, and all of these things to take you so far away from what your degree is. And it's just a natural thing. Like they say, what is it? You promote a good technical person to a manager, you lose a good technical person, you get a bad manager. Usually, I'm not saying anything about it, but in the technical profession of engineering, that's what we say, because you're a great engineer, then they have to become a manager, and now they're not skilled at being a manager, and you lose that awesome engineer, and so it's just a constant battle for us. But Carter tell us about your degree, because this has been awesome for us in his background.
Yeah, I've got an industrial systems engineering degree. It's kind of like a business engineering degree.
The business of engineering.
Yeah. So we do all the technical classes, all the math, but a lot of our classes are focused on like presentations and communication, which has helped with the consulting side of things for sure. But nothing really prepares you for like those calls with the clients or the contractors or anything. So I had the communication experience, I think, from the education, but most of the experience really has come from just doing it and being on those calls for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have. I mean, on the job, just going to have to be part of it, no matter what. It's part of why you finished a degree. But so yeah, my piano degree didn't teach me anything about that.
Really?
Yeah, just a bunch of Beethoven that I could barely play.
I did it yesterday. Right?
Yeah, I did it. Melissa, do you know Melissa Vaughn by any chance? We were at
I do.
Yeah, we were at her house yesterday.
Oh.
Beautiful house and really cool shots. I don't know if you've been to her house. It's beautiful. But she went to Harvard. She got a master's degree there, which was cool to see on the wall. I was like, oh, wow. Now I feel not smart or something, But no, she's great. We had a cool conversation about stress and centering yourself for all the politics that comes along with the coordination failures that becomes like a sudden rush of stress.
Right.
And so she's into yoga and meditation. So I guess I can follow up there. How do you guys prepare yourself going into something that's high stakes mentally? What are the things you do, other than just freak out?
Well, I think it's important to know that some of these things aren't really high stakes. And like, okay, that recovery didn't go up right. Like, it'll be fine. So it's sort of tempering that because we're not doctors and we're not saving lives here. So it kind of tempered in that way. But then me personally, in presentations, doing things like this, I don't think about them. So I can let it be more natural. I don't practice for presentations, but it's because I'm at this point. Like I did way back when, but now you just sort of go for it and you can talk more authentically. But a lot of our staff, it is really helpful to do those pre-runs and give them that honest feedback of you need to pause more or wait till they answer. So it's working through that helps a lot of people feel better about what they're presenting, or that they take notes so that it's really clear what are the points they're trying to get across, so they can look back and go, all right, I said that. And that's been a way to help them understand. But it's that coaching. It's that I can tell you're going to be stressed, so let's meet ahead of time and not waiting for them to ask you. It's like paying attention and being intuitive to all of the staff. And you've never done this. Let me help you.
I really like that you said it's not all high stakes. That's good advice. Just to remind yourself that it's not. Ben, who used to work with us, a mechanical engineer, had an away message that said, if you have an engineering emergency, something, and he tagged me in the email. He's like, there's no such thing as an engineering emergency. It's not like HVAC air is going to blow somebody off a building. Right. And that's similar. Not everything is as high stakes as it feels maybe when you first read that email, and it's not there. How about you?
I think it's understanding that you're a human and nothing, even the most coordinated set, you're going to get a few RFIs, you're going to get a few things that need to be clarified. So I think understanding that grounds me. And it, I in college there was a board that said make mistakes faster. So I always see a mistake as an opportunity to learn and become a better designer.
Yeah. We call it the gauntlet of going through those meetings.
Yeah.
Leaving the meeting and thinking, God, that was rough. But that's really the best way to learn. You learn for the next one.
Ours is never assume malice. That's like a big
Yeah.
like mantra. Just like never assume somebody's. Like, you just assume you've maybe misinterpreted and try to just come at it and
Yeah.
without like assuming there's malice there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really tempered our ability to control ourselves emotionally because it's a high stress thing. And that's another thing we don't talk about in education, like the emotional control you need to deal with this.
Yep.
that should be taught. And I wish I had learned before 40, you know, that there's ways that you can train yourself to deal with the stress. And like your trick, I like that. It's not all high stakes. What a good thing to just say going into it, to just help decouple yourself from overthinking it, you know, and approaching it more human with somebody like that. How about you, Lou?
Yeah, I guess our mantra's always been there are no problems, there's only opportunities.
I like that.
Yeah, that's really good.
You just need to be able to move quickly on your feet and figure out what the solution is.
Yeah. Yeah, Phil, in your experience in the Federal Reserve trimming hedges, how did you, this is,
Yeah, that was a great job for me because I could mostly just hide, and people wouldn't know what I was doing. But I was just out there trimming stuff, pulling weeds. It was a great time.
yeah, that's where Phil was before here. And he has a degree from VCU as well. And when we first got together, he was telling me how he wouldn't be trusted to trim the hedges by himself. And like, that's that kind of thing. And I'm like, wow, think about how much you're trusted with right now compared to that. I don't know. So it's been quite a journey.
I mean, for me, I was hiding out there, so this is a very different job than that, where you have to be so client facing. And, I can have a lot of anxiety. So early on, it really felt like anytime somebody was upset or if there was a mistake or if some issue or somebody was giving you a call, it would just hit that fight or flight response for me, so at this point now, like you said, not everything is high stakes. And now it's a little more like, all right, I'm not actually in physical danger right now. It's not, it would be okay. This person just needs to be communicated to. That's our job, is to be the person to communicate these things. They don't know something that you know. So yeah, like you said, Lou, it's all an opportunity. The obstacle is the way, all that good stuff.
I think it's really helpful, and what's important and why in our studio we like people to be here, because you'll have a meeting and then everybody, you leave the meeting or you throw off your headsets and like immediately you're at the other person's desk and you're like, what in the world was that? Can you believe they said that? But if you're at home and you're by yourself, like, I'm not going to go team someone and be like, oh, let's debrief about the meeting. So there's that benefit of that immediate response of, I need somebody else to validate. Did I hear that wrong?
Yeah.
Did I hear that right?
Yes.
Tell me it's going to be okay. Give me a cookie, whatever. But like, you come back to balance by being with your team and having them support you and say, it'll be fine. We'll fix it. Don't worry about it. I did that too,
Yeah, that's so true. We do that all the time here, and that's probably something we could focus on externally with the teammates external to our individual firms as well, as building that kind of trust. We go back to that, and like I think Stuart, the call that I had with him this morning is just being able to trust the general contractor. Hey, here's what we discovered. Let me run this by you. How do you want to approach this? It's going to be a surprise, and being able to trust that he's willing to work through that with me, and not just go straight to, why didn't you find out this meter, blah, blah, blah. Why is it, it's like one of those weird things as an engineer. It's kind of not in our scope, but we're aware of it being a problem. So, it's like, well, you might want to do this upgrade here. But so with him, it's a great partner with us. We can trust that we can have these conversations quick. But then we have that 30-minute conversation, and this is kind of going back to what y'all do. So you might call me, we work something out for a half hour. How many more conversations do you have after that until it's actually resolved? Because for me, it's a half-hour call. It's like, what's the rest of your day look like after that 30-minute call with your engineer?
More phone calls.
Yeah.
I think it's calling the client, making sure that, the issue has been resolved if it was, and if not, making sure that there's a path forward towards a resolution. I think clients appreciate that more than just going dark. And so I think there's there are personality traits of being a successful designer, especially those who are on the site, client facing, they really need to be communicating to all parties. We are the bridge between the contractor to the consultant. We're the bridge between the client and the consultant. So we're here to make sure that everyone's aligned, again, behind that.
So that's hard for me to imagine. How does it even get priced? How do you even estimate the effort for all of that internal coordination and external coordination? My half-hour phone call with you turning into probably hours more of your time for just one, I don't know, register in the ceiling. And there's a million of those. How do you even begin to estimate?
Well, we use a lot of our past data. So we go back and see what was our fee on this project in this phase, and then what did we actually spend? What will the market allow for? And a fee is a big thing to try to, we come at it from like 5 different ways. It's like you do it by hour, you do it by cost of construction, you do it by percentage of a total fee. So you're coming at it from all these different ways to find something that literally just like feels good.
Yeah.
And it's like, I bounce it off of other staff. I'm like, does 50,000 sound too much?
Yeah.
I'm texting someone else. How about 30? Is that too low? Like, it's so much a gut feeling. And then it's communicating that, here's where we are. Here are the exclusions. Here are the things we have. Sometimes I'm purposely vague in certain areas, and sometimes we're purposely crazy specific. But it is a service. So we're always here for what they need. I'm trying to just balance that and then ask for those ad services if you have to have them.
You guys do adaptive reuse projects too. We've done a couple with you, right? So those ones are wild to try to estimate the efforts for. Because I don't know. I mean, everybody for our side, they think it'll be easier because, we just never use the HVAC. Like, well, do you realize how much time it's going to take us to figure out if you can do that?
Right.
It's way more expensive than if we could assume you delete it all. How is that for you? What are the unknowns? Like, how do you approach pricing that? Do you charge more? I would guess than we do.
One example was one we recently sent out. And so we went through and early in the proposal stage identified what the risks might be. And then we put in a couple potential ad service. So if we find that this risk comes to fruition, it's going to be $3,800 more. If this happens, or we see this could be resolved, I'm not going to give you the answer, but we know that might be wrong. Here's what it might be. So you still try to get that original scope pretty competitive.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way you're going to get any work.
Yeah.
And then you got to, balance just how the company is doing financially overall so that some projects lose and some projects win.
Yeah.
That's a good idea. Like all the stuff that we know might come up, just put it as an adult.
Yeah, I think, Phil, was it you talking about something? Or was it you? Yeah, the idea that adaptive reuse, we may end up having to go down this road. So get ready for that to be
It's like, we'll be competitive.
$7,000.
Yeah, and here's this. But we ran into this in the last project. You didn't ask me to do it, but you probably are. And so here's what that fee might be.
I like that you said that pricing is mostly a gut feeling, because we obviously have our instant quote that gives people prices, but a lot of times the best way to do it is just like, does this sound reasonable? And that always gets like the best result is us just like, does that sound okay?
Yep.
Yeah, I have been considering, because we use Hubstaff as our time tracking, so we have pretty good accurate data on the time we spend on everything, and just using that and feeding it into an AI, like a neural network of some sort, to train it on here's how much time we're spending. And also we have an instant quote. If you've been to permazip.com, you can run an instant quote, get a price, right? So we have like some algorithm that figures it out. But if we could take all the inputs that we got from all the estimates, compare it to the actual project data, and then train an AI to be like, what's actually happening based on what people are telling us they want us to do versus what's actually taking, that could be a cool thing. But restaurants are huge.
We just do that in like Excel.
Yeah,
real high tech.
We do too. Yeah, that's how we have a software team, but we definitely use Excel all the time. Our pricing algorithm, though, we have one that we just worked on. It's it does this it's a price per square foot decreases over time with a nonlinear curve. So, like the restaurant, for example, might be $8 or $9 a square foot up until 2,000 square feet, then 5,000. The curve kind of goes like this.
Correct. Yeah.
And then it compresses to an absolute minimum. So warehouses we price that way, and restaurants we price that way, and we're going to model probably every market that way. Whoops, I'm just knocking over this camera.
I mean, we see that too. The smaller projects will have the higher per square foot cost just because we can't get around still doing all the things we have to do, even if your end dollar amount for your smaller square footage is less. I still had to do the door schedule, even if there were only 4 versus 100, and there are 70 that are the same.
You guys have to chase down trying to help people find buildings too. Is that part of it? And then how much of that is just like you get a free architect for the day type stuff?
Rent an architect.
Yeah. Versus, because that seems like a lot of work to try to and then it may not come together. That maybe the funding doesn't work out, and you've looked at 5 buildings, and who knows? And then getting a contractor on board. Are you involved with helping people? I think so, right?
Yeah, we have a bidding phase, so often we'll outline what those services would be to be a part of that process or not. The early building process, a lot of times it's more heavy in the broker looking for spaces. We will help them then evaluate, but each one of those has a fee.
Yeah.
So you want us to do a building assessment, you want us to do
Okay.
a concept fit plan, you want us to do a massing study. Sometimes they're free, sometimes it's a small fee, sometimes we plan that it's low and we'll make it up later.
So we find, there's all that schematic or preliminary studies you do, and then we get a plan and we're like, ooh, we need a bunch more space. So how do you guys like get hourly engineers or something if you feel like you need it, or have you just figured out that on an assembly use, we're going to definitely need XYZ, like without an engineer yet at that phase, because there's no budget and it's
Right.
early soft cost tech. How do you anticipate those needs?
We have past experience to come up with the program of those spaces, but I would agree that could always get a little better because those closets always get a little bigger.
Yeah, yeah. You guys actually are really great at that.
Yeah.
Versus, I don't want. I'm not. throwing
Where's the
any architect.
clapping?
Yeah,
Put the
yeah,
Yeah, please.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's
Yeah.
getting a giant electrical window. I love it.
We have been appreciative of the consideration for our equipment that you guys put into plan, because otherwise it's very difficult. Well, we're working on one that's a little challenging right now, but that's just because the user expectations also, which come in as another constraint. We had a project where I was just trying to say it's just not going to work, and then the client was like, "I need you to stop telling me that." I was like, try to say that to a structural engineer when he's telling you what beam to use. Like, I want to use a toothpick. Stop telling me a toothpick won't work.
Yeah, she was upset.
Yeah, she was mad. But that's the meditation and the patience we practice. Never assume malice. I tried my best. I might have made her a little bit upset because I told her, if you've ever seen that video, I said, it's like you're trying to get me to draw 3 perpendicular lines. And if you've seen that video, it's like a meme video of a project manager and a subject matter expert and the client. And they're saying, well, I need you to draw 3 perpendicular lines. And the subject matter guy's like, that's just not possible. And the project manager's, oh, don't say that. You just need to think about it a little bit longer. You should clearly be able to draw.
You don't understand.
Yeah.
3 perpendicular.
That's what it can feel like sometimes, And but you can get frustrated at that feeling because you guys probably have several things that you say all the time to people to try to explain, and you've repeated yourself 1,000 times. It's easy to get frustrated, or to see it as an opportunity, like Lou saw. It's like, okay, this is part of why people value our profession because we know this stuff. But yeah, so we any question? We got Emma, Jesse still here. Lou, I think we're getting close to wrapping up. Any other final questions before? You can send us a thing, and otherwise, if people want to find out about what you guys do, how do they find SMBW? Reach out.
Oh, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
Go on SMBW.com. Go on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, whichever platform aligns with your generation.
Yeah.
Come check us out.
I know. I was looking at that, and I'm just too old for all these things.
Tic-tac.
Tic-tac. Yeah,
TikTok.
Yeah. So yeah, we appreciate you guys coming on with us today. This has been a good conversation. I'd like to dive in a little bit more deeper, but I know you guys have work to do, and there's plenty more to talk about. One day I want to do another one in the summertime. We're outside, maybe get a glass of wine or something.
It's really loud out there, so your mics would have
We
to be
could go
real
somewhere.
good.
I'm trying to get one on site. That would be fun. Or in front of one of the buildings we've done. You and I were talking about at Duke. We did with Duke Dotson recently at the bar 4 hours before the grand opening of his development in Colonial Beach. Just drinking beers and just having a casual conversation. So that's part of it too for the tour. Going on site to these places. So maybe in the summertime, if you want to make it more casual, we can set it up. We got an extension cord and do something cool in front of one of the buildings. Maybe get a GC out there to holler at the yell at the engineer for messing up everything. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for being here. We are going to wrap up so we can get back to drawing things and
Drawing lines.
making equipment selections. Thanks again. Lou, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. Phil, thanks for hopping in. We will see you next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.